How about them dogs? What's up, y'all? I'm Deeg, and today we're diving into Georgia's NFL production since the year 2000. That is, how much Georgia's players have produced statistically once they enter the NFL. Per my metrics, here is how Georgia stacks up in the NFL production per position group. They're first in defensive line production, first in linebackers, that being inside and outside linebackers, seventh in running backs, eighth in wide receivers, ninth in tight ends, 12th in quarterbacks, aka Matthew Stafford, and 12th in defensive backs. And I do not have a comprehensive offensive line ranking, but we will hit on some of UGA highlights for this position as well. Not a single position group is lower than 12th, which is absolutely insane. Georgia has a massive claim for front 7U and even NFLU. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the metrics. Starting off with defensive line, Georgia was nearly tied for first, and UGA fans will be glad to know that they beat none other than Florida for the throne. Since 2000, Georgia D linemen have combined for 544.5 sacks in the NFL, which is tied for the most. They're also second most in tackles for loss with 783, the most tackles with 5,231, the second most forced fumbles with 115, and the most passes defended with 309. Absolute domination in the trenches. This was accomplished by a solid core of vets in the 2000s and 2010s, including Charles Johnson, Charles Grant, Richard Seymour, Geno Atkins, Philip Daniels, Marcus Stroud, Chris Clemens, Robert Gethers, and many more. And then the torch is being carried by Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Devontae Wyatt. And Kirby has many more dogs en route to the league as well. Not surprisingly, Georgia also leads in linebacker production, and this time it's not even close. Since 2000, UGA linebackers have combined for 407.5 sacks. The next closest school is Purdue, and they're at 294.5. Georgia also leads the NFL in this time period in forced fumbles, interceptions, tackles, and tackles for loss. Undeniably linebacker U for this century. Like the D-line production, this is done with a mix of vets and younger players. Vets like Justin Houston, Leonard Floyd, Thomas Davis Sr., Will Witherspoon, Alec Ogletree, and more lead the way, while young studs like Roquan Smith, Lorenzo Carter, Quay Walker, Trevon Walker, Azeez Ojulari, and Nolan Smith will continue to build on it. With those two positions combined producing the most in the NFL this century, it's hard to take the front 7U claim away from Georgia. When speaking all time, Georgia has always had a claim for RBU with some all-time great running backs. If you want a full deep dive on the RBU conversation and how it stacks up all time, I have an RBU video on my page. For the sake of today's video, let's focus on production this century. Since 2000, Georgia running backs rank 7th in rushing yards with 31,062 and 8th in rushing touchdowns with 219. This is mostly due to the fact that UGA did not have much production from the running back position from 2000 up until when Gurley was drafted in 2015. Since then, Georgia has the second most rushing yards and touchdowns in the league with 20,715 yards and 161 touchdowns. That is behind Gurley, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, DeAndre Swift, James Cook, and Zamir White. Alabama is far and away the first in that time period. One position that Georgia has had a sneaky good production is the wide receiver position. While UGA is usually not in the conversation for wide receiver U, and for good reasons, they are one of the few schools to produce two 10,000-yard receivers this century. Hines Ward with 11,199 yards, and AJ Green with 10,514 yards. Recently, there have been some solid producers in Hardman and Pickens as well. This century, UGA receivers combined for 37,397 yards and 243 touchdowns, which puts them at 8th and 7th respectively. You don't have to talk to a Georgia fan for too long nowadays before tight end gets brought up, but even before Brock Bowers came into the picture, Georgia had solid tight end production. Since 2000, UGA tight ends have combined for 14,317 yards, which ranks 8th, and 94 receiving touchdowns, coming in 10th. This production is headlined by Ben Watson, Randy McMichael, and Jermaine Wiggins. Bowers, Trey McKitty, and Darnell Washington will look to build on those numbers. QB production is headlined and pretty much solely due to none other than Matthew Stafford. This century, Georgia QBs have combined for 62,613 passing yards, which puts them in 12th, alongside with 390 touchdowns, 44 game-winning drives, and 242 starts. Could Carson Beck help Stafford and UGA climb up these rankings soon? Only time will tell. Next up is DBs, which for Georgia and Kirby Smart truly is next up. Georgia has been putting in defensive backs in the league at an amazing rate in the last few years, and there's no sign of this slowing down. Georgia DBs this century have combined for 163 interceptions, 592 passes defended, 45 forced fumbles, 4,977 tackles, and 181 tackles for loss. This production is headlined by Champ Bailey, who, per my numbers, has the third highest DB production out of all DBs this century. UGA also counted on Rashad Jones, Tim Jennings, Sean Jones, Sean Williams, Jermaine Phillips, and many more. Keep an eye out on all the young DBs UGA has produced in the recent years, as they could be making a splash very, very soon. To close things out, let's touch on the O-linemen that Georgia has produced. While I don't have any comprehensive rankings for O-line, like I do for other positions, we can highlight some of the premier linemen that Georgia has produced, including Pro Bowlers John Stinchcomb and Ben Jones, and second-team All-Pro Andrew Thomas, who is one of the best linemen in the league today. Of course, there have been many great starters as well throughout the years, but the production in the trenches has really ramped up in the Kirby era with 2 straight years of first-round O-linemen and 4 first-round O-linemen in the last 5 drafts. Overall, the most impressive part of Georgia's production is the fact that all positions are so highly ranked. Most other schools will excel in a few positions, but Georgia is one of the very few that excels in all positions. So what do you think? Is Georgia NFLU? Let me know your thoughts below and what school you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.